Dragon Ball community, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over our Nationals tier list for Masters. As always, make sure you guys like and subscribe if you guys do enjoy the content. I do appreciate all of the support. Now we're moving towards 3,000 subs. And yeah, let's get right into it. So we have about 50 leaders here. I composed a list of about 10 decks per color. And I tried to pick decks that I felt like were worth at least talking about or that might be considerable for play. There's, of course, if you guys have played Masters before, there are hundreds of decks. Hundreds of leaders, I should say. You might have a very niche leader that you like to play. Maybe that's not on this list. It's not to snub that leader. I just didn't feel like it was worth talking about for this. But if you do find a leader that you like, and maybe I didn't include on this list, make sure you guys leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think of that leader. And maybe where you would rank it on this tier list. So this is a pretty straightforward tier list. I've done these in the past where I've made them a little more in-depth. But I made this one pretty simple just so, especially newer players who are looking at this list. We have S tier, which are going to be our best choices. These are probably going to be the best choices from last set or anything from the new set. So we'll keep an eye out for that. We have A tier. These are going to be alternative choices. So these are going to be decks that kind of fit in with S tier. They might be maybe a slight step below it. We have B tier, which are going to be our rogue decks, which there's a lot of them. But rogue is kind of a weird category because a lot of these decks could kind of fit into these roles and they might have a particular reason as to why they could be picked. But they're going to be rogue generally because of low play, or maybe just kind of being used as a counter pick. We have C tier. These are decks that I would advise against playing at Nationals. I'll try to give a reason as to why, but these are all, I mean, this is obviously all opinion based anyways, but these are going to be my opinion as to why you shouldn't play these decks. And then D tier, there's going to be just not worth even talking about. There's very few of those decks on here, but I did have to include some of them to make it 10 leaders per color, just to make it even. So there are a few decks that are in here that are kind of like that. So, all right, so we're going to start here with the tier list. I'm going to try to make this, kind of fast a little bit. This guy here, the Anniversary Shinran Goku, I'd put it in advise against just because of the paywall kind of behind this deck. You're probably going to fork over at least $500 just to build your Z deck, which is kind of what this whole deck's about, is playing the Z Unisons. And unfortunately, they're all really expensive right now. I think the most expensive one is like $170 to the making of this video. And then most of them are between $40 and $80. So good luck if you're gonna fork over the money for it. But even if you have all those cards, the deck is just kind of like mid at the most. So it's just not, it doesn't have enough support yet. And again, the cards are just too expensive for the average person to play it. We have Super Saiyan 3 Goku. It's a rogue tier pick. I probably wouldn't even put it, I would probably almost put it down here in D tier. It's good because of the fact that you have a really powerful floodgate in whatever it's called, the Vegeta negate that makes your opponent pop energy, which is pretty powerful. Other than that, though, like, the deck doesn't do a lot. You just kind of just play defense the whole game, and you're just kind of playing for time, which I don't find to be very fun. Surprisingly, because I do like playing Hatch, but I think Hatch actually has more interactability than this deck now, just with all the 8-drops that you can play. We have Trunks, probably rogue tier at the best. This is a very overhyped black deck. It was okay, maybe about a year ago with the new support. Now it's just kind of, if you can, so the problem with the deck is that you have to have 4 cards in order to functionally go through your chain, basically. So you have new promo, which reduces the 5 cost by 1. You need the 5 cost in your warp and 8 cards in there, which shouldn't be that very difficult, you would think. But if you do get caught up, you might not be able to do that. The 5-drop has to survive. It's a 20k with no barrier. And green and red and black all have a way of removing that card off the board, and those are all very popular colors. It's very powerful decks that have the ability of doing that for 1 or no energy, so that they can just kill that. And then the 8-drop also needs to be in your warp, and you have to spend another energy for that, and you need to be able to spirit boost, which I have been told that some people playing this deck haven't been using the spirit boost effect, which is a whole other reason I wouldn't play this deck. I think I just don't think it's that good. I probably won't be proven wrong. It's probably one of the, I do play black, that's like the main color I play in this game. So I'd say my opinion's pretty high on this color. I don't think this is something you should play. If someone wins it with it, if someone does well with it, cool. But it's just I would there's better black decks to play than this. Like this Shroom and Salsa. This is a better black deck. This is something that you should be testing if you are playing black or hoping to play black at one of the nationals. This deck has a really good matchup into most of the meta decks that were from previous last sets. Primarily Kidku. Like, you have a very good Kidku matchup. You're warping stuff from their drop area. That's all going to come in line with them not being able to play out their big battle cards. Or even just being able to play out their skillless cards, right? Also, you can play Broken Seal for 1 energy, which is incredibly good. And if you call, there's certain decks that if you call a card, like for instance, like the Swap Goku deck, wherever it is, this guy, yeah, right, like the Swap Goku deck. If you play against the Swap Goku deck and you call, I think it's a 4-drop Goku, they can't awaken. This can't awaken. So there's definitely some decks that are like that where you can just kind of call a battle card and they can't play it. So yeah, it's pretty good. Next we have Cooler. I would put Cooler in A tier. It's a mill deck. It does really well into most of the decks currently still, just because a lot of decks draw or burst through the deck, and Cooler's going to do very well. It won Nationals last year, so it's hard to say that's not going to be good this year. We have Dark King Mechikabura. I'd put Advise against. Unfortunately, having the potential of taking your own life because you need to grab the balls from your life and you don't have a second way of awakening is sort of a hindrance. So you can kind of have matchups where you don't have any balls in your life. You might have some where you have 3. And against, if that matchup just happens to be against a Kidku or something else, you're basically, you take 3 damage yourself, and then if they hit you once or twice, you're already at 3 or 4 life, and that's just not, it's just not good. So I would advise against playing this guy. Broly Surge is going to go in D tier. There's not much to really say about it. It has some cool combo stuff that you can do. But we're at a point now where there are both better green and red decks than this, and it's just not worth not being able to draw on the backside. Videl, I would put Videl in probably C tier. This is a deck that just receives a little bit of support. Says some cool things you can do with it, but it's a skillless deck that, unfortunately, there's already a better skillless deck in the meta. So it's just not worth. I would just advise against playing it. And again, they're just better green decks. Bardock Prism. I'd probably put Prism like right here. Surprisingly, like if you look at the actual deck, all the cards are 16Ks, so they pass the Kidku check, being able to play a card in that, and it doesn't die instantly. They all have good effects. You have unison removal markers. You have the ability of tapping cards down. You have the ability of actually reducing cards' power with the 8-drop, which is also a 10k free combo and warps a card from your opponent's hand. You have the 10 cost, which you can do tapping. You can burn cards from their hand. You can burn a life. There's a lot of cool things that this deck can do. It also can search the counterplay and can search the Vegito 6-drop because they're both SS4s. So I think this is something you should be playtesting if you're looking to play black at Nats. This is a potential deck that you can potentially play. This is definitely a deck to try out. It might be a really cool rogue deck to play. King Cold, I put King Cold up here as well. Just received some support, and the support's actually really good. It's one of the only decks in the format currently that has a untap 2, which is really strong considering this deck can actually build a really huge hand size early. You can sort of control your awakening with being able to take life off the fields and off your leader effect, which is really powerful, allowing you to kind of push the tempo the way that you want to. You have a bunch of free negates. As long as you don't run into yellow, you'll probably have a decent time. As soon as you run into yellow and they play Absolute Annihilation, most of your deck doesn't work anymore. Jiren's probably in the same boat. I probably put Jiren like right here. Jiren can probably be played. I just think it loses to red. It just loses to red a little bit. So who knows? There might be some people who play Jiren. I just think because of how much Kidku is being played, you probably won't see things like this. But Jiren is definitely a possibility. We have Black Goku. I put Black Goku in probably an A tier. Now, I'm not a super huge fan of this deck. I think it's too glass cannon. Regardless of what some people say that it's not, it's glass cannon. You sacrifice having a large hand from having a large hand to being able to kill your opponent early. And if you're not prepared, this is going to be considered like the Exodia deck. of this Nationals. We've always had there's normally an Exodia deck or like a turn 2 or like some sort of OTK deck that has existed in national metas. This is the deck for that. So it's good in the fact that, yes, if you just high roll your opponent, you will kill them very, very quickly. However, have a little bit of defense, it won't happen. So that's where you have to kind of rely on your defense to be able to kind of survive to, like, after they're awake, like the turn after they awaken, they're going to start losing power, and by then, if you can sort of stabilize, you're okay. If you can't stabilize, then you just lose. So, but again, I think it's going to be really solid. But again, I do think there are better black decks. So, but if you really like playing aggro, this is a black deck you're going to want to play. We have U7. I would put U7 like right here. Probably only loses to Cooler, really. U7 is extremely powerful still. Definitely something you're gonna see somebody play at Nationals. Got a few new tools with the new set with like the 6-drop Cell Goku. I mean, you have tons of secret rare options still that you can play. So you have a lot of stuff you can choose from. It's gonna be weird seeing this deck now at Nationals again for the 2nd year in a row. Because most decks at like this power level are banned. So this is like one of the first decks I've seen at this power level where it's consistently still playing really well. It's going into its 2nd Nationals now. U7 Goku or Gohan. That's probably not. This probably isn't bad. Probably put it rogue tier. Yeah. Yeah, we'll say rogue. I say rogue. I actually don't have too many words on it. It's just kind of like, I don't think it's a bad option. Like if you played this, I'd be like, okay, that's kind of cool. Yeah, it doesn't belong down there. Nova. Nova's our first S tier deck. Incredibly well put together deck. Draws a ton of cards. Tons of interactiveness. Utilizes the Z deck very well. Also doesn't have to attack to draw on the front side. All good things. All good things. And it's one of the few decks that actually I think has a winning matchup into Kitku. 7Ku, not worth playing. Blue Ramp's just too slow. We got Kitku. I don't think we got to talk about this much. I'm going to put Kitku, though, behind Nova. Because I do think, funny enough, I think a lot of the S tier decks actually have winning matchups against Kitku. Which I'll talk about once we get all those up there. But basically everything else below this is what you have to figure out, like if your deck has a decent matchup against Kitku. Skillless Gohan. The promo is pretty powerful. I'll probably put it like right here in the middle somewhere. I think this deck could be pretty good. Yeah, I think it could be pretty good. We got Bojack. Bojack's probably like back here. I think Green Bojack's pretty good. Yeah. It's one of the few non-green Saiyan leaders that actually is pretty viable. Oceanus, this is another A tier deck. This deck is probably like right. We'll put it back here. I don't think it's as good as Nova. I think it actually is more has, I want to say, more pushing options because they literally play almost the exact same cards. But this deck actually has a better matchup in the black than Nova does because you can play a lot of your 4-drops from the warp. So that's actually pretty cool. So that actually gives you a little bit more of an advantage than Nova would. Because one of the big things about black decks is putting cards into the warp. So if you're putting their cards into the warp that are 4-drops, especially like the promo Nova, you just play it back out, right? And then you're playing out a 4-drop and then another 30k for 1 energy, which is really solid. We got Gohan. I would put Gohan the top of Rogue tier. Probably B tier. It's weird. It's kind of in this middle range, and I might switch my mind up depending on what I put in B and A tier going forward. But it is, man, it's still playing. This is another deck that kind of pushed all last year and was really good, and then got nerfed into the ground right before Nationals, but was still played. So I think it ended up still topping, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. There are better green decks. But it's still a solid green deck. If you don't know how to play against Gohan, you should probably at least have a few matchups. I'm sure there's some on YouTube you can watch, but you want to know how to you want to know how this deck plays. And actually, I think it's probably worse than Shroom and Salsa because Shroom and Salsa actually is a counter pick to Gohan, so we'll put it there. Hatchiyak, I would advise against playing Hatchiyak. As much as I love this deck, it's different playing Hatchiyak in an online tournament by yourself with no distractions, right? And like plenty of like, you know, ways of like rehydrating and stuff. And I'm not trying to be funny, but you have to have like a really strong mental to play Hatchiyak for 8 to 9 hours at the biggest tournament of the year, which there's already gonna be a lot of stress on you, but now you have to make sure that you are prepared for that. And I don't think there's enough Motrin and or whatever Excedrin that you actually need to make that possible for a lot of people. With Hatchiyak, yes, you have all these really cool cards you can play now. You have all these 8 drops. It's really cool. But as soon as you make a mistake with Hatchiyak, you tap too much energy, you do something, it's really hard to recover, and you take a lot of hits from that. It's something, again, there might be 1 or 2 people who play the deck, but I would advise against it. I think there's just more things, especially like it's not a, for someone who plays Hatchiyak quite a bit, there's points of the game where it's just not fun to play. Like, sure, you're stalling your opponent, but you're not really like doing much. So I would advise just playing against it, just for mainly just your own sanity. Is it a good deck? Yeah, it's a good deck. Is it the best black deck? Absolutely not. You shouldn't put this in like, hey, this is the best black deck you can play. Just because you're, again, mentally, a lot of people are not mentally strong enough to play this for like a 9-hour event in person. It's just not. I would advise against it. Tapion. I'm gonna put Tapion at A tier. I'll put it like right here. I think Tapion's still super solid. It's going to get overshadowed by one of the other blue decks in this list, but it still draws a ton of cards. It recently won a regional in Latin America, so it's not a bad deck, right? It plays pretty well into Cape Q, so definitely think Tapion's still a contender if you are struggling with finding a blue deck to play. Super 17, I'm going to put Super 17 right here at the top in B tier. We're going to need to see some stuff out of this deck. There's a lot of hype around this. I think it could be a pretty decent deck. Having Double Strike basically available on standby. It's basically a Z extra Champa. Archetype's pretty powerful. You have some good non-red Saiyan cards you can play in the deck as well. Some that are searchable, I think. It's a cool deck. I think it's going to fill pretty well into that like third or fourth slot for red deck options. Namek Goku, I'm going to put probably right here behind U7. Really solid. Best green Saiyan leader. It gets a little overshadowed by Cell, which I think is the best green leader, at least going in the next format. Both of these decks do decently well in the Kid Q. Just Cell has a better matchup and also has crit built into the leader, which is really strong. Namek Goku does rely on the unison a little bit too much sometimes, and their unison doesn't have like the same effectiveness as like Vegeta with being able to like protect itself. So obviously you have like things like Dormant and Uneasing, so that's pretty cool. I'm 100% positive someone's gonna be playing Nameku probably, and they're gonna get top cut more likely. Super Gohan is probably Rogue tier. Probably put it like right here. The anniversary box support makes this really good. The Z leader is incredibly strong, but a lot of these decks that you can beat, like you're gonna beat a lot of the mid fodder decks with Gohan, and then you start playing against this stuff, and because of your lack of hand size, you'll probably end up losing. So I think it's probably fair to put it right there. Gogeta, I'm actually gonna put. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna put Gogeta way up here in S tier. I think it could be argued as the best blue deck that we've had. Like national season last year, we had like Android 21, right? Which is now I'm gonna put Android 21 down here just to advise against playing it. But that was a really strong deck, countered the U7 really well. Gogeta plays really well, honestly, into most of the meta, right? and to the two big colors that have really powerful extra card floodgates, right? With yellow with Nimbus and red with Explosive Dance, you can swing through both of those very well because your leader can swing twice. That's really, really strong, right? That's a really, really strong effect. So all of your bodies are 20k or more. You got a boss monster that can clear the board. You have a secret rare that technically you can play in the deck if you wanted to build a ton of Z energy. I think it's a really strong pick for people to play in blue, and we're going to see a lot of Gogeta. Like 100% we're going to see a lot of Gogeta. The other fusion we have is Vegito, which I would put down here in like Roguish tier. It's funny, like this deck, I remember when the anniversary box came out for this deck, everyone's like, oh my god, this is like the best red deck ever. And then I think one person ended up topping that Nats, and then the deck just kind of went away. It's definitely a rogue thing now. You definitely want to be prepared to playing against it. They got another card now that you can play, I believe, from the Vegito archetype. I'm pretty positive of that. Yeah, I think it's still a cool deck. Like, this could be a pretty interesting deck. It's more mid-range control, so it has to just survive. But I mean, you're a red deck, so you can play Explosive Dance. So like, you have and you have some cool things you can do. Actually, you should be able to play Explosive Dance. I know you don't charge mono red. Yeah, I think you can play it. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's mono red or not. It's not mono red. Yeah, it's not. All right, so we have Bardock. I'm gonna put Bardock probably again in rogue tier. All right, I don't really have a good placing for Bardock because it's not well played. No one really plays it. Frieza swap. This was one that I couldn't find a place for it. I'm gonna put it just down here in C tier. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, C tier seems a little low. C tier seems a little low. I'm gonna put it. Well, I'll put it in B tier. It's definitely roguish. Yellow deck that has access to Cold Bloodlust. Just haven't really received a lot of support, so I mean it's probably right there. Yeah, so like you have like the barrier blocker, you have the ability of negating card skills when they come in. That's all really good. I'm trying to think of some other stuff that you can do with it. Can't think off the top of my head. Yeah, the barrier blocker stuff. It's almost like a Frieza Clan version of like Trunks Vegeta, right? Go Bros. We'll put this down. Not here. Not worth talking about. Again, this is one of the decks I just had to fill up the 50 cards because, like I said, there's not like more than 10 decks really from every color. We have Green Vegito. This deck has a lot of hype around it. We'll see. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Boss Launcher is really strong. Got some cool stuff you can do. We'll see. Apeku is probably A tier. It seems like it's always just done well. Having a board full of just nothing but barrier cards is also really annoying. There's not a lot of decks outside of black that can deal with barrier that much. So I think Apeku is probably pretty solid. We got Vegito. I'm gonna put Vegito right here. Vegito has winning matchups against, I would say, the 3 of these decks. Cell's really difficult. But all of these decks here, I think, are all pretty solidified, I would say, as S tier. For me, personally, for my opinion. Again, you can have a different opinion, but this is just mine. This is what I'm going off of, right? Pan's really close to S tier. Pan's probably like right there. Yeah. I watch this locals on YouTube every week, and their Pan player just like, man, it's scary. It's scary watching how good Pan can be played. Milzamasu. Yeah. Yeah. Not super hyped on it. Golden Cooler, kind of the same thing. Like, Golden Cooler is cool. No pun intended. It's better than some of these decks. I like right here. Yeah. What I would like to see from Golden Cooler, man, It's... So I've play tested it a little bit. I'm going to put it up here. Changing my mind a little bit. It's really good. It is. I'm trying to think. Like, the free playing is really strong. The unison will get cracked, of course. And you kind of have to have the unison in play to actually do anything. So once the first unison dies, now decks that can't really remove the unison, you know, you're playing out some pretty strong stuff. One problem is a lot of your deck is revolved around Prison Planet. So when you start playing other cards out, or you start trying to tech in other non-Prison Planet cards, you're kind of hurting your ratios a little bit. It's difficult to combat that, because like there's certain cards you're like, oh wow, this would be really helpful, but I can't search it, right? Because I'm always searching other cards. And you kind of need to be able to have Prison Planet cards in your hand too, so like you can't really cut down on your Prison Planet ratios that much. I don't know. I'll put it back to where it was, like right, like in this area here. Supers 13. And it's just weak. Support wasn't enough. Majin Buu. Majin Buu's definitely rogue. Probably like right here. Yeah, probably like right there. Majin Buu is, it was more so as the surprise factor of the deck as to why it did so well. But if you know how to play against the deck, I don't think this is going to be as good. And also, I think the Gogeta deck just does like what Majin Buu wants, but better. Because you don't need to revolve around the Z Unison, and your leader can still swing twice. Spirit Bomb, the support wasn't enough. I actually was going to play Spirit Bomb for the 2 events that I played in this year. I ended up playing Vegeta Xeno instead, which was obviously the better choice because I ended up topping. This was, it's cool. Like, the new support card is really good, but it's just too slow. Just too slow. Aegis Gogeta, weird enough, it's probably still pretty good. I just think the deck has to be played a little bit, piloted a little, maybe slightly differently. Probably still good. Yeah, it's hard. Like the deck has a lot of power to it. I can't put anything. I can't put it in B tier. Yeah, I can't put it in B tier. Gogeta. Gogeta SS4. We'll put it right here. Right here in B tier. So I was really hyped on this deck when it came out. I know some people said it was like trash, which was obviously incorrect. The deck's done okay. It's topped a few events. Yeah, it's okay. It's an okay deck. I'm trying to think of like some downsides to it. I mean, your hand size isn't huge. Like there's a lot of cool stuff. You have a free negate like once per game. Yeah, it seems okay. Yeah, I think rogue tier. I don't know what it counters. I don't think it actually counters anything in the meta. I'm trying to think. Yeah, actually, you know what? It's probably a little bit farther down now since they technically changed the ruling on Aegis. Yeah, that actually probably affects it a little bit. Let's move it down a little bit. We'll move it down like below Boo. Cumber. Cumber is definitely an A tier. I would put Cumber like right here in this area. So things that Cumber does very well. So Cumber has 3 cantrips you play in the deck, 2 of which are free. That search almost every card in your archetype. 1 searches on any Cumber, which is more than almost close to half of your deck. And then you also have the Trunks, which searches the Trunks and the Evil Saiyan that search out all 6 cost or less Saiyans. So between those 2 cards, those 3 cards, you can search literally your entire deck, including a secret rare if you play that secret rare. Not to mention having free negates, having the ability to draw and remove cards in your opponent's board at the same time. The Z extra that now allows you to go into your Z leader for free is very strong. You have one of the strongest Z leaders probably in the game, because of your ability to combo away certain cards. This is on offense and on defense, which can really shock some of your opponents. If you don't play Cumber, it's really I would say it's kind of it's difficult to judge if you don't play it and like religiously play it and learn all the play lines. If you're just looking at it from just like a card efficiency perspective, and you're like, this deck doesn't play as much like value as some other black decks, you're looking at it wrong. There's a ton of value that you're playing. You just have to pick which value you're playing. You can clear a board with 1 8-drop Cumber. Right, they have 4 battle cards in play, all of them are in rest mode. You play an 8-drop Cumber, you just neutralized 4 other cards, drew a card, swung twice, and then probably bottom decked one of them and drew another card. So you're drawing 2 cards and removing a whole board. It's really strong. What would hold the deck back? So I'm just going to be a little bit unbiased here for a second. So what holds the deck back are going to be decks that revolve around playing Z battle cards. So if your opponent has Z battle cards on board, it is one of the most frustrating things to worry about as a Cumber player, because you can't remove them, you can't bottom deck them because they can't go to the bottom of the deck, and you can't combo them off because they don't have any combo power. So you can't like put them into this position where you can remove stuff. You have to be able to warp them. So you have cards you can use to warp, but you have to play those instead, and it just kind of throws off your deck a little bit. But when you look at things like Kidku, Nova, these are decks where you can constantly bottom deck all of their cards, and now they're going to lose value that way. With Vegito, you do have barrier removal for like single spot removal, like with the with the Cumber card. So and the new Great Ape cards, you can remove the Vegito pretty well. You don't play as Unison, or you don't have to play as Unison to rely on it for draw power and resources. So against green decks, you don't have to worry about that with them being anti-Unisons. So you have a lot of really good stuff. You don't have a Floodgate, of course, but you just have other defensive tools that you have to rely on. I think it can be played very well. I just, we need someone to play the deck. So I end up this might be my Nats deck. I'm currently testing like 3 or 4 different black decks. It's definitely there. I just need a little more oomph, I guess, to play it. So we're like right there. But it's really solid. Broly. I would say Broly is probably, I don't know, Broly's interesting. It's like when you look at the Broly cards, you're like, okay, like you're constantly being able to recycle your swap targets, but they don't really do a bunch, it's probably like down here somewhere. I didn't talk about this with 21, so I would advise against playing 21. I think without the 2 drops in Unison, it becomes really difficult to pilot for like a ramping standpoint. So you have to kind of play some different tools. Still really good. I mean, with the amount of green that's actually currently in the meta, like that might be a way of like playing it well, because you have the green energy now for your 8 costs and your 4 costs. With blue not being incredibly popular, kind of reduces your, again, what you can play with. You're playing against black and red, and these are all colors you can't really use their cards really for energy efficiently. So yeah, it's probably in that, like, honestly it's probably more so in like B tier, but I would advise, like, if you're looking at a deck for Nats, I wouldn't take 21. Future Gohan's still going to be very good. It's probably like right up here in this area here. Still a super solid deck. It just ended up getting top 2 at the most recent Dragon Ball event we had in the US. Swap, I would say Swap's probably going to be probably like right here, right there. This deck has a lot of value to it. I just don't know if it's enough. Still think these are just better. These 2 and this are just better. Fu is Rogue probably at best, but where in Rogue? Like right here. So Fu's very, very similar to Cumber in some ways. Where Fu lacks is that you have to play 2 different cards, 2 different Z cards to actually function most of your deck. And Cumber needs 1, right? So that kind of already helps you there. Cumber can awaken and go to 6 life. Fu has to awaken at 4. That hurts the deck a little bit. Fu can draw without attacking. It's pretty cool. It has the directional thing. I would say this: if you're comparing on playing one of the two, Cumber technically beats Fu. So, like, because you can just bottom deck all their servant stuff. So I would say Cumber is definitely gonna be the better one out of the two. The other thing with Fu is that, so just a little hindsight here. So when you play the deck, so you have to play out the Z battle card, and you have to play out the extra card in order to start playing the deck. Basically, so you can start playing the game, right? So you're putting your Cumbers into your Z deck, and then you're putting them underneath the Fu, and then you're playing them back out, right? You need the Z extra to continue to recycle those cards, or else you're playing one of them per turn, which is still okay, but you're basically using 2 cards to play out 1 card, right? Not to mention, now you need to be able to play the counterplay. So now you have to pay another energy, or 2 energy, with 1 or 2 Z energy to play out the counterplay. Well, Cumber needs 1 energy and 1 Z for the Fu, and then 1 energy and 1 Z for their extra card. I mean, and for their Z unison, right? That's very easy to build. Fu has a free playing card. I mean, it has a free combo card. So does Cumber. Very similar. Very, very similar. I just put Cumber a little bit ahead. Just because you don't have to rely on the Fu Z battle card as much. While in Fu, you have to rely on the Z battle card basically to play out, again, a good third of your deck is those 6-drop Cumbers. That leaves us with Majin Vegeta as the last one. I would put Majin Vegeta in the Rogue tier. Probably going to be like right above Fu here. The new support has been very good for the deck. Definitely something that people should be playing. If you're testing out Yellow, the board wipe is pretty good. It probably will deal well with a lot of like the Rogue tier meta cards. But once you start getting again into these higher tier decks, that's why these are here. And most of these decks are going to be here. Is that you have to definitely deal with this stuff up here. So I think it's pretty good. Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. Don't know what else I would change. I'm sure someone's not gonna like where I put one of these leaders, but that's okay. So you guys let me know if there's a deck that I missed. Let me know in the comments. Plead your case for that deck. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Pretty long Dragon Ball video here actually, so I'm gonna cut it here. But thank you guys for watching. If you guys stayed throughout the whole video, if you guys skipped to the end just to see where the tier list is and you didn't hear my interactions, I mean, it's on you. So if you didn't actually get my opinion on them, that's on you. So but that is it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.